Hello and welcome to Clawful Evil Probable Claws, a show where we discuss Wildbow's most cuffed up work. I'm your very villainous hostess, Vice Versailles.
And I'm your conniving hostess, Kippos. In this debriefing, we're covering Chapter 4 of Arc 6, Bear.
Of all chapters ever, this is the one that I could see.
It felt like a movie kind of thing.
It was vividly in my mind the whole time. I pretty much stopped being able to use my eyes to know where I was.
It was very like, now that I'm thinking of like back to reading it, it very much painted that picture. You were in the scene, I feel like, for this one.
And more than a couple times, like in Natalie's eyes, especially with like the description of the bullet hitting the brain. I have been blessed not to be in such no holds bars fighting as Natalie has to go through at the end.
Yeah.
But that sort of like feral state where you're picking up information and acting on it just as quickly, and there's like this like fully exhausting alarm. Like the way that it was described, like it's fully like I was no longer experiencing the world that I was in. I was just in Natalie's head, in this extreme hell.
I think it's really interesting because so I have talked to one other person that has read this chapter, and they had a very similar experience to you, where they said like they were like just fully into it. They fucking loved it. Whereas like when I first read it, I don't know, the end of the chapter fell a little flat for me on my first read, and I didn't like love it that much. But like on my second read back around, I was fully on board on the second read and fully in love with how it ended. Yeah. The first time it was just a bit too disjointed and confusing for me the first time, I think. Like it just wasn't clicking that well. Whereas definitely that second time round, it all fell into place and I was very much on board, and I felt like that, like the disjointedness and like the confusingness, but like that felt like it was what it was supposed to be, and it felt like it was good. You know, it was just like very much in Natalie's head as she was very disjointed and confused and feral. Yeah. But the first time it just didn't land as well for me, which is, I don't know why.
A challenge with writing things in almost in the manner of their experience. And you know, it's coming from the very same space as a character's individual like voice and the way that they perceive the world. That emotiveness and bodily experience goes in the same place, and you can get this effect where when the writer is trying to capture an energy or a specific vibe, it just kind of isn't clear because the headspace isn't right for you as a reader.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to too much video game music. There was a soundtrack to this as I was reading it, and it was if like the you know, words on a page do not naturally make your blood pump. Like it's a real like particular cocktail of time to spare, lucidity, locked in to enjoy something, like right conditions to be absorbed like that. But I'm really glad that like to have had that experience, just because that this is such a culmination for Natalie and everything that's been going on with her.
Oh, it's so fantastic. Yeah.
And I really want to think about where she fits in with what this says about Davy. Because I pulled a quote for the very end. We won't be talking about it for 2 hours, I think.
This is probably going to be a long episode, folks.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a long chapter. And it's packed.
No, that was a previous book. Good book.
Oh, sorry.
This is Claw. Sorry.
It's Claude. It's It's being delivered like Santa Claus. It's all wrapped up together and like bow tied, and it's like it's heavy. It's under the Christmas tree, and there's a lot to unpack.
I pulled out a lot of notes for this chapter. And even then I like had to skip some things.
I mean, I've had the chance to read over your notes, and I had this really strange experience of like between every moment having maybe we could also talk about the one thing that happens between these two polls. And then I realized that would mean like doubling what is 6 pages of notes.
Yeah. I mean, I did at least one time I did, like, I pulled out notes and then I kind of was like, oh no, I do actually want to talk about that thing. And I jumped backwards and I pulled out something more. But yeah, there's a cutoff point that has to be made.
With any luck, I said this last episode as well, we'll get to talk back over it with this when we do the interrogation. There's definitely things to get into here. But we might as well just get right underway. We're going to be here for a while.
Yeah, let's chapter summary it up.
In 6.4, things are royally ducked, with Brian bleeding out and just about everyone ready to keel over from exhaustion. Everything feels targeted at Natalie as she frets over the kids and tries to do what she can to help, to Mia's chagrin. They try setting a bomb, which barely works. Carson offers to sacrifice himself heroically, which Mia refuses. And Davy monologues from his drones to taunt them, building a narrative where he's the good guy, searching for signs of weakness. Say, for example, Ripley becoming a celebrity for how Mia kidnapped her. Natalie insists that she has the means to brave the meteor juggernaut, but gunfire starts on their position. As a last resort, Natalie tries to buy a chance, and submits herself to custody, only for a cop to ask what sort of criminal she is. When she accepts how she has fucked up, and the cop can't match the truth to Davy's narrative, a shootout starts. And what's this? It's Natalie Teal with a steel handcuff? She goes completely fucking feral on Davy, ripping his throat out, going unconscious, and waking up as Lorraine Roy, alone, in hospital, with only a bag of clothes, some numbers, and an interesting set of 4 initials to her new name.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like, obviously, you know, I'm doing it to myself now, but like, what a fucking chapter! Like, oh my god, new catchphrase! What a fucking chapter! Yeah,
I think people should start saying "what a fucking chapter" to things that have just happened.
Yeah, I like that.
You know, you have a long train ride, and you say "what a fucking chapter."
Yeah.
But I mean, my god, I feel like you could have fit an arc in here.
Yeah, it's so much, and I do love like everything about it. I love that it's from Natalie's point of view. I love that drag out fight at the end. Like I said, like it didn't hit for me the first time round, but that second time round, I fucking love it. It hits so good. And then like waking up in the hospital and anyway. Look, we'll get into everything.
We'll get there. For now, BS predictions.
Yeah, so our last week's BS predictions is Mia's going to upload her consciousness into the cloud at the same time that Ripley gets a machine arm, so that she can in fact metaphorically hold both of her mom's hands at the same time. And I mean, another catchphrase is it's not disproved, it could still happen.
Well, the thing is that's why they're at the hospital.
Yeah, that's what they're doing
happening in the next room. Yeah. I predicted that Sean will suggest that he and Natalie have a third kid, which will solve everything.
Always does.
And that is, of course, the other reason that Natalie is in the hospital.
Wait, is she already, like, pregnant?
Because she and Sean caught up a little while back. That was mentioned that he was in town, and now we know why.
Oof. Yeah. Well, I mean, she's doing so well for being pregnant.
Yeah, you know, it's definitely a time where, you know, things are nice and settled down. Like, she's got just the community she needs to help her through the full 9 yards, the full 9 months. I bet that there will be no problems in that
no
problems
at all.
Oh,
yeesh.
I mean, we could do like an expectations, reveals, questions, impressions line up on this, but before we get into the beat by beat, there was a reveal that hit me hard.
Oh yeah,
it's that Carson didn't die.
Yeah, there was so many death flags for Carson. Also, there were a lot of death flags for Natalie. I remember my first time reading through, like, every time she noted about, like, the martyrs, I was like, oh, she's gonna die. Like, she's gonna martyr herself and die. So I was not expecting her to live through the confrontation at the end. But I'm pleasantly surprised. A lot of death flags in this chapter, and I'm happy that so far, as far as we know, it's all good.
It's the United Nations of death flags. Just like every possible opportunity, like to get into the beat by beat. The way things start up in this chapter with like Brian's blood streaked over Mia and Carson Hurst from the duct taping him up, and from him being draped over Mia's shoulder. Natalie had helped lift him down because she was the most able adult, but she'd at least managed to wipe away the blood. And like immediately, we are in the thick of everyone is on death's door.
Like, like our two kind of more mainish characters in Mia and Carson like are literally covered in blood. Yeah,
and some of it is even theirs, which is unusual.
Exactly. Them. Some of it is theirs. And even worse for them, most of it is a child's. Yeah, I don't know. It really puts you in the scene straight away, and it's like it's very. I'm going to say this a lot, I think, about this chapter, but it's very visceral. It really puts you in there. Yeah, I mean, yes, literally, there is a fair amount of viscera here. I do also find it really interesting, like, thinking about Natalie's priorities here. Like, I really enjoy that Natalie is so normie coded compared to, like, Mia and Carson. Like, because she's, like, thinking down about Mia and Carson because, like, she has, like, taken the time to, like, try and wipe away all the blood off of her while they haven't. And they're, like, instead focused on, like, trying to keep Brian alive and, like, moving to, like, continue, like, to get out of this situation. I find it really interesting that she still has that, like, normie, quote unquote, the normie coreness to her where she's like, oh, I've got to clean this kid's blood off of me.
I'm not sure
like, that's a priority.
I feel like the more central aspect there is that, like, if Ben is the cameraman, Natalie is the lady on camera.
Like, I can see that, yeah.
There's an awareness of how things are going to look throughout this whole chapter. She's, like, thinking about the police narrative.
She does note that, like, not long after, yeah.
And it's really interesting that just as far as, like the way that these early lines hit the tone and tell us that things are dire.
Oh, yeah. It feels hopeless from the get-go. Like, yeah.
Natalie had helped because she was the most able adult. Like,
which is... Oof.
Like, if she is normie coded, she's currently the most functional person here in terms of just, like, least number of wounds.
Yeah. And, like, obviously she is quite wounded. Like, she got the shit beaten out of her a couple of times from one of Davy's lieutenants. And it just happens that Mia has potentially, like, torn the muscles in her shoulder. Carson is, like, what is it described as? Like a small dog, like, halfway through eating, like, viscera. Like, the
wound in his side is just free.
It's
they're trying to hold poor Brian.
Yeah, who has a bullet through his fucking chest, basically, or stomach. Neither is good.
I do like that the kids are starting to, like, hold a bit more space in Natalie's attention with this. Like, this next quote that you've pulled, that the boy was bleeding. Camellia, of all people, was struggling with even walking, and that had to be the residual effect of blood loss. Not that Natalie was a doctor. Weird stray thought, but, like, the exhaustion, I feel like, fits in that sort of defensive-ness in even an internal monologue.
Yeah, like, oh, she's probably got blood loss. Oh, not that I know. I'm not even a doctor. Like, it's very Natalie to be defensive even against herself like that.
Defensive of telepaths is like, it's a degree of internalized shame that it really hurts to be in that place. I have sympathy for that. Where you're feeling bad enough that you're, like, jumping at your own thoughts.
Exactly. And I think it's really interesting that even though Natalie ended last chapter with calling Ripley, we see now that, like, straight away in our new chapter, she's back to her old ways, immediately back on the Camellia train.
Hey, progress isn't linear.
It isn't linear. And she does really, really well later in the chapter, and I'm pretty sure I pulled the quote from it. No, I definitely pulled the quote from it. Yeah, but it is interesting that, again, she just jumps right back into Camellia. Like, it's very much, I don't know, it's one of those things where, and I talked about this a bunch in my live read, I think, about, like, and I think I talked about it last week, like, the way you fix these, like, things in your mind is you don't go, if you don't just ignore it, you don't go, oh, Camellia, blame. You go, Camellia, and then you go, oh, fuck, no, not Camellia, Ripley. Like, you chastise yourself in your mind and you make sure to, like, think the correct name. And then over time, you stop needing to chastise yourself because you start just getting it correctly, because you're used to actually thinking that name as well. Yeah, so...
Like, that was kind of what I was getting into last time we recorded, with, like, in the same breath, or both the same, like, neuron that she thinks Camellia, she thinks, not that I'm a doctor, right? Like, that mechanism of self-reproach and correction and, like, holding yourself back is overactive for Natalie. So it overlooks the things that she would actually like to, or other people might want her to prioritize.
Like,
there's not a lot of yield out of saying in your own thoughts something like that had to be a residual effects of blood loss. Very normal assertion. Not that I'm a doctor. Unnecessary self-critique. It's like that mechanism is there. She's just not using it constructively.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, and obviously we get to it later in the chapter, but like, Natalie does have things where she has fucked up in her life, and it is good for her to look at them and say, here is where this bad thing happened, and this is like what I was doing that made this thing happen. And it doesn't mean that she's a terrible person for doing it. Like, things happen, but it's important to be able to recognize this is what happened, and like, this is why it happened.
But I think she gets there by the end.
She does get there by the end, which is really good. But like, it, but yeah, she has this response of like, oh, fuck you, myself. You don't even know shit. But she's just misusing it. She's just attacking herself for everything except for the things where she has some like internal, like, coming to peace with like the things that she has done to do.
It's interesting to see Mia in this moment, like, especially like, so Natalie is in that degree of like hackles raised, feel like living in that self-reproach. And Mia has gotten to the point where she can't provide the real approach, like, because of course these two have been biting into each other at every opportunity.
Yes.
And they're more similar than they are different, I think is reasonable to say. So we have this moment. I know Mia said, but if we don't wait, I don't think any of us make it. The fact that she was agreeing without raising any issue felt like the most surefire mark that their situation was bad.
Yeah. I did love this moment of like, you're so close to being dead, and like, Mia is like so fucking badly injured with her leg and her shoulder, and it's like, you can't even banter at that point, and like, that's pretty dire. It's bad.
Even at their weakest, they managed to keep it a little bit up.
They do, yeah. With our next quote of, Natalie hurried forward, past Mia, and moved some branches and things out of the way to reduce noise. She held a branch back. That'll make us easier to track, Mia murmured, a voice muffled by the mask she wore, almost drowned out by the siren wail. I love these two. Like,
legitimately cannot help herself. Could not help herself. Absolutely
cannot help herself. Like, Mia, come on, sweetie. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, you are moving so slowly. There's no,
But like
come on.
They've really ingrained that like, just think she's breathing out so that she can use the breath to be mean.
It's so good.
I really wonder at like what could have been, where if there is another arc of Claw, which, like, we have no reason to believe. It seems like arc 6 is going to be our final. If there were, what I would have loved to see is a Mia and Natalie, like, buddy cop series.
That's Claw 2, that's Clam.
If there's Clam, if there's like Carapace, it's too many
that's
letters.
Way too many letters.
Claude.
Claude, yeah.
Because they'll call each other Claude a lot.
Yeah.
The thing would be just this back and forth of biting into each other, taken as far as possible. And I think it would be enough to get a whole extra serial out of.
Yeah, I mean, it's very fun. Like, every time they've interacted, it's been very fun. Like, they just can't help themselves at any point in time. Neither of them can, really. They always just have to try and bite the other's throat out in these, like, really snippy, really little, like, bitchy kind of ways, and it's really fun. Like, I love it. It's like, it's so stupid. Like, Mia, shut up. Like, you know, but also,
like, I love that you
don't
put
shut
an
up. It's so
actually tone onto that read, because
Thank
that is
you.
how it felt.
It's how it felt. I'm sure she was just like, that'll make us easier to track, which
Yeah.
also sounds bitchy.
And she's exhausted.
But
like,
yeah.
there's this thing where we know these characters quite well.
Mhm.
When you read like unassigned dialogue, it can happen that you just sort of insert their general tenor and don't really interrogate how it might have come off.
Yeah.
Timbre is what I'm looking for, not tenor. And like, I think something that we definitely found when we were with Ben and when we were with Valentina is that the momentum that we had from Mia and Carson paid into those perspectives and sort of like shrunk Ben's believability, shrunk Natalie's believability, shrunk like Valentina, like their authority more so. Whenever Mia and Carson pipe up, it's like they're the center of the universe almost, so they have more authority. But like when you break out of that space a little bit and you get to consider alternatives, Mia just being complete fucking idiot here.
She's just
being
she's just being petty. Like,
it's so
wrong
petty.
and petty. It's so fun. Like, but yeah, like,
and
obviously
and
Mia, stop it. Like,
yeah, it's in this context of this next quote you've pulled. They took a moment to rest, and it felt like they shouldn't. They had to, but they shouldn't. Like, this is so the end of the road for everybody.
Yeah, like I've put here, like, you can feel the walls closing in. Like, their options are just so limited, and they're just getting worse second by second as Carson gets closer to dying, Mia gets closer to just collapsing, Brian gets closer to dying, Ripley gets closer to collapsing. Like, they're all fucked, and every second that they take to gather their strength is a second that the net like closes around them. But if they don't gather their strength, then they won't be able to get out of the net at all. Like, it's just, it feels hopeless. It genuinely feels really hopeless during most of the chapter. Really. It's almost hard to read in that sense of like, oh God, like, what the fuck? Like, how are they gonna get through this at all?
And it's not obvious.
No, it's not obvious. So, which kind of like leads to our next thing, of Mia saying, what are our odds, Mia asked, turning to Carson, that Ben and Ryder swoop in. This is Ryder's speciality, Natalie said. Extracting people from terrible situations. Low odds, Carson replied, ignoring Natalie. And I'm like, God, you gotta feel for Natalie in this moment. Like, she is just kind of bought into the fantasy of Ryder, that like the idea that he puts out, that he's like the lone rider, the sheriff, ready to swoop in and save the day. And it's like, just not realistic. Like, he can't come in and take out the drones and the two extremely skilled like special forces people and the cops and the gang members and Davey and everything. Like, it's just, Natalie is just living in the fantasy land that Ryder kind of puts out. Which sucks.
It's pretty, like, I the thing that struck me in this moment was how it's kind of like mother like daughter, because in this situation, we saw Ripley try to draw on those same sort of stories.
Yeah,
like, sure, they weren't anchored in the world like Ryder's mythos is, but it's like, reaching for something for hope and support in a time of need.
Yeah, it's a comforting fantasy.
It's about as effective as it was for Ripley.
Yes, it is. I mean, like, the fact that they just ignore her, and like, this comes back to what you were just saying before of like Carson and Mia being like the default authorities. Because for most of the book, we've been in fucked up, miserable situations, and Mia and Carson have been in a lot of fucked up, miserable situations. But like, they're right. Like, I'm sorry, Natalie, but that point deserved to be ignored. But at the same time, it sucks that you got ignored. It's just, she feels so pushed out to the side at like every time she interacts with these people. It's friction, and it's herself being pushed away. And sometimes it's kind of valid in this case where Carson is just like, look, they're not going to come and save us. And sometimes it's Mia being like, that'll make us easier to track.
Yeah,
and it's
well, as far as like looping it into the text, at the very beginning of this chapter, Natalie is worried that she shouldn't voice any thoughts because, I think I can find it. She's wondering about Davy, and she thinks she didn't want to ask because she didn't want to hear the Hearsts give their explanations with their expert knowledge, which they'd earned by keeping criminals on the streets. It's that catch-22 of if you are asking the Hearst something, you're getting their very lopsided worldview and their very accurate perception and skillful background at the same time.
Yeah, and like in a way you're like validating that background by saying, in this situation, I need your help, and I only need your help because you are horrible criminals that have done so much wrong in the world. Which is like it's a way of like validation of that worldview. Which is like it's hard. It's a tough time that she's in.
Oh yes. I like this bit of this would never have occurred to me. But it is the sort of like this next quote you've pulled. Is the sort of revisionism that we have caught Natalie in, or like that Mia has really dug into Natalie into for before.
Yeah. So like a couple of paragraphs before this quote, she says like, Ben had, like, in her internal monologue, she'd said, like, Ben had told Sterling about the Centipede's Dilemma. And here she says, still, she'd take it. Ben and I were telling Sterling it's called the Centipede's Dilemma. And I'm like, that is so interesting. Like, she's fully called out that Ben called it the Centipede's Dilemma. She didn't say shit about herself talking about it in her internal monologue. And now as soon as she has to say it out loud, she's like, oh, yeah, no, that was me too. Like, she's inserting herself into a lesson that she didn't give, which makes it seem like she's more involved in Sterling's parenting as well. Which I don't think is on purpose. I'm definitely not saying, Natalie, how could you lie like this? I'm saying, Natalie, your internal world is like so cooked, like that you feel like you are more part of your child's life when you just haven't been, like, at all. Like, Ben taught him this. You sat in the chair next to him and commented on it probably. Like, I'm not saying you were completely absent, but you were not the person giving this lesson, and it's disingenuous to claim that you were.
It's an interesting contrast to where she'll be at the end of this chapter, because the thing is, like, why does someone try and score those little points? Why do they editorialize in that way? It's the same reason that she's reaching for like writer's fantasy, or like. The sort of like honestly the self-soothing component of like policing your own thoughts. It's trying to feel like there is something right and that there is still hope.
And it's making her feel less like she failed Sterling.
And like it's reasonable to try and keep your head above water that way. It's not necessarily honest, and it's not necessarily practical in the sense that the thing we would love Natalie to do is to be a really great mom for Sterling, and that this sort of appearing to like trying to make herself appear that way isn't necessarily the way to do that.
It's like if in her internal monologue she kind of like noted like, oh, Ben gave him that lesson, and then was like, oh, that was an interesting, like, that was a good lesson. I want to try and give Sterling more of those lessons. Oh, how lucky now that I get to like pass on that lesson to another of my children. This is something that Ben taught me and like Sterling, and it's something I can teach you. But like she doesn't, it's like before, like when she self-attacks for the things that are not reasonable to do so, and she doesn't like self-reflect on the things that are reasonable. She doesn't think about how she can like do better for her children, because she doesn't accept that she has not done amazing for her children, basically. She does later in the chapter, which is really good. But I just think it's very like it's very consistent with her character that she would kind of insert herself into this lesson like that, in like the revisionism. And then on this whole thing, oh sorry, go on.
Well, I wanted to bring us on to this moment, because it's another thing that I wouldn't have caught, or I'm not. Like, or rather, I'd like you to convince me it's as you've written.
Okay. So Ripley is saying, like, oh, at the dentist, like, oh, I never know what to do with my tongue, like, either at the dentist. And Natalie, like, laughs and is like, oh, Sterling too, at the dentist, it drove him crazy. It's why it came up. You are his sister. And it's like, no, everybody at the dentist doesn't know what to do with their tongue. That's normal. That's what everybody experiences. Like, come on. Like, Natalie, you're reaching for the strawest of straws. Like, this happens to everybody. Like, come on. I don't know. I think Natalie is just, like, absolutely, like, reaching and, like, grasping for anything that would let her tie her two children together and, like, tie Ripley to her, as her mother. And I think it's silly. I think this is a nothing. Like, oh, sometimes when I eat cereal, I eat all of the cereal first and then drink the milk last. And, oh, Sterling does that too. You are his sister. Like, come on. Like, come on.
So here is the thing. Perhaps it's because I've never had this problem, because my dentist has always been very vocal about getting the tongue away.
Okay.
In the case that I must have some different approach to the whole scenario. Maybe it's me being an outlier. But because when I received this information, it wasn't like everyone does this, which is the thing that like that shocked me in this note of like, is that how it was read? Oh, I didn't know that everyone did that. And as I've established earlier, when I was reading it, I felt like I was fully in Natalie's head and experiencing it. I thought this book was really sweet.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like, it struck me as like one of those adorable, like, whimsical strangenesses, because for myself, I have a lot of siblings, and we have odd things in common, things that I sometimes forget about and that people will notice are similar. Like, for example, I didn't transition until after I had left high school. But there was a period where when I was entering high school, that people thought that I was my sister's twin. And I got a lot of gender euphoria out of that, and I was very sad
Nice.
that it stopped being a thing.
Oh.
But people, I actually started to notice again, which I'm really relieved about, that our mannerisms are quite similar, and that we have all of these, like, little resonances that say those two are siblings. And it's not necessarily obvious in how we look, because we dress very differently. We're very different heights. There's not a lot that jumps out in terms of facial features, but the way that we speak and the way that we act and the things that we find funny, all of those like leap, and it was really lovely, and to feel like close to my sister when people would notice that. And it's happened with my brothers as well. Well, more so with my younger and older brothers between those two, because they are hilariously similar in a bunch of ways.
Okay.
So that, like, to the point that people, like, don't know who is on the phone, if it's just a voice, and will be mistaken for one another. And so in my head, reading this, it was this cute moment of like familial bond of, like, these are the same instructions being read by different people. Sometimes the thoughts just come out the same way. And like, even with entirely different experiences, there can be similarities. And in this sort of triptych of that we've drawn out of Natalie going Ryder, Ben, Camellia, in quotes, and each of those having elements of fantasy. They're like, reaching for Ryder is like reaching for an institution, and it is completely flawed. There is no delivery there. And we've seen Ryder break down. He wants to deliver on that, but they're the ones being surrounded by police right now. There's not a way to deliver on that. Then there's a moment with Ben where Ben has been, in a big way, Sterling's parent, and she sort of editorializes herself into part of that picture. even though that the lion's share of her resources has been on finding Ripley. And that has an element of like undermining fantasy to it as well. Of like I understand why she wants to count that point for her self-esteem, but it's not really real.
No.
But then there's this moment where Natalie's daughter, who has become someone entirely else, is just like her brother. And like the one thing that Natalie has in her corner, right? Because Ripley has next to nothing in common with her, is the fact that the DNA test was a 1-to-1. Like, it was damn certain. And she can fuck this up over and over again, and she can do this interaction completely wrong. But she finds a real, or tiny, a whimsical, an adorable, a silly mote of real hope. Because, yeah, she is his sister. That is real. And that's worth standing up for. That's worth protecting. And you know that there's a lot that is messed up and difficult and complicated about Natalie, but she finds a mode of simplicity here as she's trying to figure out what the fuck to do. And for me, it was like this real breath of like, aw.
I guess like in any case, like yes, she's like found this mote of hope here. I guess we disagree about how genuine it is.
It could be hysterical. It could be like a huge generalization.
I think it's such a big generalization. I think it's yeah. I functionally I think this is something that most people do. It's even if it's something that like not most people do, but a lot of people do. I don't know. It's not this super niche thing.
Like how twofold. I on this particular topic, I can definitely see how one, your dentist not just telling you to keep your tongue away, and two, you not having the instinct to poke at whatever strange thing is being shoved into your at your teeth.
And then like you have to like consciously think about your tongue the whole time, otherwise it's just going to start doing things.
Then you just hold it away, like put it in the opposite side. Hey, maybe it's 50-50. Maybe this is the whole world.
Maybe it is. I don't know. I feel like a reasonable interpretation, like not an interpretation, but like a reasonable thing of this would be like, oh yeah, when I put my gloves on, I start at the left hand and I go left to right, like thumb across, like in terms of the way I put it on. And I do the right hand and I go like pinky across. And oh my God, Sterling does that too. Like that is niche. Okay. That's niche. That's incredibly valid for like, oh yeah, you guys are siblings. That's crazy. But like, yeah, I don't know. This feels more like, when I wake up, I put my pants on and then I put my shirt on. Which, yeah, like, I don't know.
Well, like, crazy. No one does that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But, like, as far as, like, what this is, like, psychologically, it definitely leads into the next bit. It's this mode of kinship where Natalie feels a bit more grounded and hopeful of the world and its truth. And then Mia butts in, talking about her head injury. And like the simple things that tripped her up, the centipede experience. And Natalie thinks, you couldn't even let me have that. You took 11 years of my time with my daughter away from me. You butted to this moment too.
Yeah, which I think is such an interesting contrast, like between this and last chapter, where like Natalie talked about like, oh, this is not the line of forgiveness, being that like Mia has a brain damage. But like it was a step towards it. Whereas now like she's just straight up pissed at Mia for like speaking here. Like, and she just can't even offer a scrap of empathy of like, there's no like, oh, that would have been hard, but still, how dare you speak? It's just like, how dare you speak, you bitch? Which I think is really
at each other's throats. What they
do. It's really interesting. I don't know. It's so, progress also, is not a linear thing. Like, obviously, this is a step back from last chapter, but also
it is like the sore nerve, like the problem.
Oh yeah, like it is.
Whose daughter is it? But no matter whose it is, that the very next heartbreak.
Oh yeah, the next heartbreak is Davy's "I see you," and then no. Camelia's voice was small, nearly a whimper. Oh, fuck. That one hurt so much. Like, it's impossible to read that and not just, like, have your heart shatter just a little bit. Like, this poor fucking traumatized child where she just hears his voice and just, like, shrinks in on herself. Oh, I hate it. Like, it's so good. I hate it so much.
Talk about economy of word choice.
Yeah, I see you, no. And like, as soon as you get the no, you're like, oh my fucking god. Like, oh, poor Ripley. Like, she's a fucking baby. She's 11. Like,
this is a kid. Yeah.
this is a kid, and the dude that fucking tore her arm off yesterday is like hounding at her heels again and like rubbing it in her face with this, and it's like fucking hell. I don't know. It's really hard. Yeah. And speaking of no, Carson tried to stand and couldn't. He leaned back against a tree, looking up at Mia. No, she said. Like, Carson are trying to die. Name a more fucking iconic duo.
For those at home, our document has those little like semicolon dash semicolon crying faces in it, and it's just Kip losing it over this section.
Yeah, there was one in the previous quote as well after Ripley says no. There'll be more coming up. There's a lot of times where I just like pull the quote, just put that face in there because I'm like, it's hard to read.
This poor man, like he
oh god, like he can't even stand up. Like
he can't stand, and he has to provide everyone like the logical analysis of here's 10 reasons why you should leave me behind to the dogs. And it's the real viscera here, the chihuahua sized animal eating away. And
it's fucked.
Everyone just disagrees. Like, they can't allow it.
Yeah. I like that Mia's like if it was just love, I would respect your choice and I would be like miserable. Like, I'd miss you. I'd be miserable. But we have children. No, like, fuck you. Stand the fuck up. Like, I need your burst of energy to keep me going, to keep our kids safe. I love them. I love them.
Complete me. It's so sweet.
They're so perfect for each other.
Isn't that a fucking like Brad Pitt like cheap like movie like bad rom-com quote? I don't know, but
I don't know.
I don't think that can sully this because like
you can't.
When I said
so
Carson
good.
was going to die, this right here is the working for why, right? Like the scene could have just ended in his death.
Absolutely it could have. It felt like that's what was going to happen. Like, the fact that he couldn't stand, like, and it's not like Mia can pick him up because she fucking tries and she can't do it. She's not strong enough at the moment. She's too injured. And and then it takes Natalie like walking over and helping. Which is, I don't know, it's perfect. I love it.
I love how
that's our what the fuckle of the week, by the way. It's me and Natalie Carson. Jesus Christ.
I mean, if they could make it work, it would make Ripley's life a lot clearer. But
it would. Let's move along quickly from that one. That's a bad idea. I shouldn't have said that.
I just want to like hear. The thing is, Natalie's internal monologue is like a mosquito to this scene. Like, just like it's the tone that Mia and Carson are trying to go for of just like undying loyalty, like I can't carry the ring, but I'll carry you, Mr. Frodo.
Yeah, it's desperation and love.
And like I really think it's like romance and on a big level of like two people saying that the sum of them is supposed to be together, and then it's Natalie of all people watching this happen. And she's like picking up the narrative. Like pointing out things that are true, like they're not your children. And I think like the big reason that is like the reason we're not in Mia's head for this, the reason we're not in Carson's head for this, is because in Natalie's head, all of those like flaws are sort of our protagonists. Like these two have been like beating hard at the story. So for this huge moment where one of them is ready to die for the other and the other isn't ready to let that happen, for someone to be like refereeing their narrative and come to what I think is a really important conclusion to make in regards to Ripley. You'd be a fucking martyr. Nobody would ever live up to you. Not Sean, not me. Like, the Natalie can't stand the idea that Ripley as a person will be just like wiped over by someone turned into a myth, right? Like turned into a fantasy. Because if they become these sort of floating variables that can hold whatever shape they need in order to provide the most like emotional impact, then like there's nothing that Natalie can do to reach Ripley in the way that she most deeply wants. Like she can't replace an idea.
Yeah, she would have her child, but she wouldn't have her child, you know, like Camellia would be 100% gone at that point.
And that's the big fear that that Natalie has had, that any expression of Ripley's is inauthentic because it's not an unsullied Camellia, which has stopped her from perceiving Ripley truly. But this sort of moment of going full circle and like I don't want you to die in front of Rip. Like it's not Camellia. It's this
it's not
person.
even Ripley. Yeah, it's Rip.
It comes full circle. This like I cannot let the criminals that have raised you become immortal in their like and perfect. And so suddenly she's re-engaging with scenario and thinking about what she can do. Like what is the practical change she can make?
Which is helping him stand up.
Yeah.
Okay, so, okay. We have a lot of notes.
Oh
golly. So then they're like creating this bomb, and Mia says like, "There's a chance this goes off in a minute, and there's a chance it doesn't blow up at all. Be careful." Be careful, Carson told her. They lied like they breathed, leaving details out. Mia didn't mention that there was a chance this blew up in Mia's face. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But there are times to lie by. There are times that you should lie by a mission, and that is now. They don't have any other option. Like, they need to place these bombs down to like put the fucking hunter off of their trail so he doesn't shoot Ripley in the head. Like, Natalie, come on, girl. Like, it's a normal thing to leave out. Like, you don't want to like put that out into the world anyway. Like, I don't know. I'm not superstitious, but I think I'm a little superstitious, like, I guess.
She's really just like translating the romance, you know? Like it's not a like soulful moment of like eye contact where everything's understanding. It's like, you left that important detail out. I, as a spectator, had no fucking idea that was the case.
No, but she does recognize it as part of the case because, like, yeah, Mia and Carson are not mentioning it. I don't know. It feels like the same as like moving the bushes out of the way will slow us down. Like, it feels the same as that, but she's not voicing it. But like, it's the same kind of like just at each other's throats. Like, they lied as easily as they breathed. Like, yeah, don't freak. Like, okay, no, I was going to say the children, but Brian's like not conscious. Like, don't freak Ripley out thinking that her mom could blow up. Like, she doesn't need that. If it happens and deal with it. But like, it's probably not going to happen. Don't, you know, like freak her out and make her think everyone's going to die.
The thing is, like, in like so throughout all of this, we've got Davy's horrifying like monologue, like trying to find weaknesses, right? And
it's brutal.
Natalie's problem of she didn't want them to be martyrs. She would always be second place to these heroic, brilliant, strange, eerily strong people whose failings and flaws would be downplayed and ignored. Like, there's multiple levels here of just kind of like trying to claw into the cracks and like find vulnerabilities. And the central weakness is of narratives and like how people have justified themselves, what they've left out, what they've included or emphasized. And like, Natalie has the role of just like very with accuracy and yet this odd shaped benevolence, like trying to claw into the way that Carson and Mia communicate to each other in what otherwise had been a dramatically soulful moment. Because then moments later, Davy does the same.
Yeah, well, I do want to quickly mention that was beat 2 of Natalie thinking about the Hearsts as martyrs. And obviously in beat 3 it gets reversed. Anyway, I just wanted I enjoyed seeing that there was a 3 beat
tumbling around her head.
So yeah, then we get Davy. I promise you she'll be famous. Her identity in those vital adolescent years will be the kidnapped girl. The media will adore it. They'll never let up. And I'm like, honestly, the way that Davy is using this as an attack when it's like always been a core part of Ben's plan for Ripley, oh, chef's kiss. Like, oh, mamma mia, that's a perfect.
I would absolutely love in our interrogation episode to get into the composite monster that is Davy. And as just like ingredients to a recipe, right? And a part of this is just he's going down like the Rolodex, rolling the kaleidoscope of what is the thing that's going to see at the heart of Mia. She when this angle is found, she reacts, and Davy digs into it. And it's Ben's, as you say, it's Ben's plan. But Natalie's part in that is she doesn't actually support it.
Yeah, like she thinks she can weather the storm of that, and like that she's made plans and stuff, and that like she like recognizes that it was going to happen, and like it's fucked. But
and
she thinks she has,
she knows what it's going to be like.
Yeah, exactly. Which I don't know. I don't buy that she would have weathered the storm. I think I've talked at length about how I feel about this. So in order to not get any more angry comments in the Reddit, I'll move along to the next quote here. Where she's talking about like what it was like, and how if they looked at every bit of you from corner to corner, your earliest days to now, your hopes and dreams, dug into who you were as a person, and then said even the smallest negative thing about you, it felt like every last one of them had judged you and found you wanting. The same if it was something you'd put your heart into. And I like this. I really like this comment. It feels very meta comment. Like it feels like a meta commentary on like the way that people can talk about art. Like, because people put their fucking souls into their work. Like no matter what it is, like people are fucking slaving away, putting blood, sweat, and tears into their art. Someone that's like written some things before and stuff. Like I put a fucking lot of work. Like I put part of my soul into whatever my work is, all the time. And like unthinking or like unnecessarily like flippantly like negative responses like absolutely fucking gut you. Like it feels so cruel. And it really it feels like they've seen your soul and said no. And it sucks. Like it's shitty. It's such a shitty feeling.
I especially appreciate that it felt like every last one of them had judged you and found you wanting.
Yes. Yeah.
Like especially after seeing Natalie's flashbacks, like that sensation of the entire family being like a single pressure. Followed by the mass media around her charity and her attempt to find Ripley, and now like interactions with Ben and the camera, and like all the way up to the way that Mia talks, and has this sort of essence whenever Ripley is around of all the versions of that Ripley could have been, and Mia being every version that of the person that kidnapped her that Natalie could consider. And the thing that's like that jumps out to me about this is that Natalie lays it out really plainly. And like I'd love to get into the meta commentary angle. But like the thing that that is just confounding for me, like it's such a strange assertion to be making with such confidence, is it's handled. I was in the wings when 2 people got their children back. I saw what happened. I played a bad part. I've been thinking about the aftermath of this for years. I've made plans, taken measures. You don't have to anything to worry about. None of what that man is talking about. And is that
Cam-Ripley?
Yeah, so she makes that Camellia Ripley mistake, which is what Ripley connects to. And there's that hilarious line, "My name is Ripley," Camellia said. And like the thing that caught me there is that, well, she makes a really thorough argument that and is possibly, just like Mia and Carson, like a bit of partially lying or embellishing for Ripley's sake, just to put confidence back in everyone.
That's 100% what it feels like.
And like I'm genuinely not sure how much Natalie believes this, because like she's frantic about trying to get them in contact with this lawyer they think can do this.
Yeah, look, I think she fully believes it. I think she's incredibly wrong. Like, she's planning to release a documentary all about like her poor tiny baby Camellia and the evil kidnappers and how they've like worked so hard at getting her back. And like, there's no way that shit doesn't follow her. Like, absolutely no fucking way.
I don't know.
Yeah,
honestly, because like the world is in pieces.
Yeah, I mean the world is in pieces, but like I think that was mentioned a couple of chapters back about like how like the government and stuff goes in Claw is like things get bad for a while and then they get a bit better. I don't think it's possible that Ripley, like that, you know, this happens, the documentary gets released, yada yada. Like, I don't think it's possible that Ripley grows up without consequences from that, without extremely serious consequences from that, without essentially what Davey is saying will happening. I don't think it's realistic. Just the way people are.
I mean, this, like, I think it remains to be seen, because so much of what Davey has to say is later undermined by like the reveal that the reason he hadn't been constantly monologuing was because he'd been busy coughing. And like that he was sort of constructing this narrative while the police could overhear, so that he could feed it to them at the same time, and like was flying by the seat of his pants. But before like we see for sure and get a definite answer, because I do think it's world of opinion. We're in Natalie's head. She's confident. Do we trust her? Good question to ask.
Yeah.
The meta commentary angle of like judged you and found you wanting feels like it's everyone, like every single one of them felt that way. There's a reciprocal to that where like Natalie gives her absolute best to try and assure Ripley that things are going to be okay, and she makes one stumble, and that is the thing that Ripley catches onto.
Yeah,
and like
which feels realistic. Yeah,
it's realistic, but I think it draws an important parallel to the creation of art and to like the existence of an audience, where if you are speaking to that many people, the odds that someone hears something that is hurtful, and that you haven't represented things perfectly, and you know, maybe they're like within that excusable reasons, Natalie is exhausted. She hasn't had that much time. Like the way that she puts the argument is that it's only because it's the name I've thought about and used in my head every hour for your entire life. I'm tired. We're all tired. Let's focus on getting out of here. Like that is her defense. But Ripley is still hurt. I think like there's a parallel to draw from art to parenting there very directly. Of, you know, you can do your absolute best and still cause harm, and it will, and like it doesn't matter like why a car crashes, someone still gets run over, you know? Like the injury is still real.
Yeah, exactly. Like it comes to mind like the difference between like reason and excuse. Like there is a reason this has happened, but that is not an excuse. Like it does not excuse what has happened. It's just the reason. And what Natalie can do, what anybody can do in this situation is like take on board the feedback and try and do better. And obviously, like in larger situations around, in terms of meta commentary, in terms of releasing art, you know, obviously this is a situation with two people talking, not a situation where you put something out and 50,000 people respond and 500 of them are telling you to kill yourself or something. Like the best thing you can do in these situations is try and hear the feedback, and if it's good feedback, take it on board. But obviously, this is a more simple situation where the feedback is very obviously good. I mean,
but she gets there before long.
Yeah, she does get that, which is excellent. I do. The way that like Natalie is just refusing to try and consider in her mind Ripley is like so absolutely destroying Ripley's mental health, though, and that sucks. Like every moment, like I talked about it last episode, where like every time Natalie drives like a wedge between Mia and Ripley, like she then drives one between Ripley and herself. Like, you know, if you're Ripley and you're looking at your two options of Mia, who is your scary mum that you've just found out is actually super criminal, and has hurt a lot of people, but also genuinely really loves you for who you are. And there is Natalie, who is trying her best, and she is not a super mega criminal, but she just keeps on hurting you all the time. And it's not her fault. Like, she has a reason, but it sucks. Like, it is just stripping away at Ripley's soul every moment that it happens. In that situation, what the fuck do you do? Like, as the 11-year-old, I don't know. But I feel like you don't really want to go to the parent that doesn't consider you, that considers you as an object that they once lost. About this, I use the name all the time. I'm tired. We're all tired. Let's focus on getting out of here. Like, I do want to say it is incredibly funny that this is like what she was complaining about, like Mia and Carson doing. No, mainly Mia doing, like, last chapter. Whereas, like, anytime there was like a point against Mia during the argument, she was just like, we've got to keep on moving. I'm like, and it's like, Natalie, that's what you're doing here. Like, she's just made an excellent point, and you're just like, I'm tired. We're all tired. Let's get out of here. Like, come on. So I think that's quite funny. And second of all, like, Natalie, you're not fucking trying. That's the problem. Like, there's no point in time where there is a second beat after you've said Camellia in your mind. There's no point where you say, oh shit. Like, and speaking as someone who has, like, a bunch of trans friends and who has tried to, like, really hard to unlearn names and consider new ones, and, like, same thing with, like, pronouns and stuff. Like you actually think about things when you fuck up. Like, you in your mind, you do the wrong one and you go, fuck, no, that's not correct. The correct one is this. And then again, like, as I was saying earlier, like, over time, because you're consistently actually saying the correct thing in your mind, you get more used to thinking the correct thing. Whereas if you're only ever thinking the wrong thing in your mind and just trying to say the right thing, then there's obviously a mismatch, and you're obviously going to be fucking things up very consistently.
And the problem is just that, like, she just considers Ripley the incorrect name. Yeah,
she's not making a mistake. She just thinks Ripley is the wrong, like, the correct thing to say would be Camellia. But because of the woke mob, she has to say Ripley. Sorry. Anyway, she considers Ripley as the incorrect name, the just flat out incorrect, that Camellia is the right thing to say. She's not making a mistake, she's making a choice, which sucks. That sucks. And then we get Ripley let out a shuddering breath, shrinking closer to Natalie. Such a terrible moment and a beautiful one, and I'm like, fuck, this is fucked. Like, it's so sad that she's finding beauty in this, because it's not beautiful, it's just sad. Like, I get why she finds it beautiful, because it's her daughter is, like, coming closer to her, like, to, you know, be comforted. And it's like, that's not beautiful. It's an 11-year-old that's traumatized, that had her arm taken by this dude, and who's freaking the fuck out and is looking for any comfort at all. Like, I don't know. I get why Natalie thinks this is beautiful. I do not think it's beautiful. I think it's tragic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then... Oh, sorry. Were you going to go into the next one?
Then there's her request. I did. I'm sorry. I really am. I know I'm asking a lot. But could I hear you call me Mom just once? Or Mama? Anything works.
Oh, like, it's so... You can feel the desperation, and that's what hurts here. Like, you can feel how just fucking absolutely desperate she is for this. Oh, yeah. And, like, the way that Ripley says, no, I don't think of you like that. Oh, fucking Christ. It really hits you right in your soul.
But hey, at least Ripley doesn't lie for other people's benefit. Because it's such a problem when everyone else does it.
Yay! I don't know. It's one of those things, like, you can't blame her for doing this. Like, she's, like, just desperately looking for this, like, one scrap of, like, support and, like, a tiny bit of hope to get her through the hell that she knows she's about to walk into. Like, it hurts. And then, like, she attacks herself for it later, and I'm like, sweetheart, no. Like, there are so many things you can attack yourself for, and I do not think this is one. I think this is just desperation. It genuinely fucking heartbreak moment again. And then we get to anxiety moment. Yeah. This is your final warning. Do not point that weapon at Ripley. And I'm like, it's so fucked. Like, the way that they're just, like, in the background of everything, like, leading up to killing Ripley. It's fucking brutal. And that rising anxiety is just fucking twisting your heart the whole chapter. Because, yeah, they're just, like, laying the seeds for, like, yeah, somebody's going to shoot Ripley because it's going to hurt us the most. Like, they'll probably try and make it non-lethal. Whoa. Yeah, and just, yeah, these things in the background of, like, don't point that weapon at Ripley, which is, like, just giving himself, you know, the excuse. Fuck me. It's just, yeah. I don't know. It's hard. Yeah.
We're about to get into the depths of the Davy conversation.
Yes. Yeah. So she'd thought about dying before because of these two monsters. Now she faced a very real possibility. She'd die for them? No. For Camellia. Ripley. Beat 3! Time to martyr yourself. And again, like, finally, it's Ripley. And it's Ripley in a very, like, decisive way, whereas, like, I feel like previously it was, like, incidentally Ripley, whereas here it's what I've been saying this chapter is, like, for Camellia, and then a break, herself. And then Ripley, like, and that was wrong, this is the person I'm talking to.
I feel like it turns, like, the excuse into an explanation for wherever else the Camellia name comes up, because it's like, okay, when you are gathering your strength, you can manage a Ripley decisively. So when she just sort of is, like, the very next line, but what would Davy achieve? Carson was right, Davy would shoot Camellia. It's right back, because like, she's working against the momentum.
She is, yeah.
But before we have the encounter with Davy, we have
the encounter with Carson.
We have Carson just laying it out, just explain it.
Yeah, just putting it very, very plain and simple. You're attached to your daughter. That girl with Mia isn't her. Same DNA, but she's not your Camellia. Mia took that when she took her and raised her. And I'm like, that's correct. This is just correct. Like, I'm sorry, Natalie, that girl is not your daughter. She is the child. She is the grown-up version of the child who was once your daughter. But Mia took that from you. And that's fucked up. But that's how it is.
And the thing is, she asks the core question of, how are you okay with that? Like, yeah. It's something that she has been resisting, because to embrace that fact at this point would be to be agreeing with Carson and with Mia. And
he's got an answer.
Oh, I like the idea she's done so much good that it makes it okay. Wouldn't it be nice if the world worked like that? And she thinks a complete and total monster. He didn't.
I love it.
I mean, oh
yeah.
My goodness.
Carson, yeah, like, he's saying right there, he doesn't believe this. You know, he doesn't say, oh, no, she has done enough good that it makes it okay. No, she's saying, I like the idea. He just thinks it would be nice if the world worked like that. I love him so much. He is, as she says, a complete and total monster. He's okay with it because it's Mia, and he loves Mia so much.
And, you know, he knows. He says, I'm biased. I love that woman.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
but, This connects so directly to what he had said when he was planning to die, of just like, I have done so much without questioning you because I love you deeply. Yeah. And so the thing that prefaces this conversation, the thing that Carson feels the need to broach, is that what Mia hasn't been acknowledging is the central unfairness in her whole approach, which of course is that, you know, she stole a baby. It's not like that's a crime. There's no getting around that. It's not a second chance.
No, it's very morally wrong what she did.
And to have this moment of, like, I don't know if she remembers this, but between your second chance and hers, she chose hers.
Yeah.
And that is why she has been so obstinate, and that there is no, like, the reason that those conversations you two have been having have been going around in circles. It's just centrally that Mia won't have that central thought of, she's not being reasonable. There isn't there is a central hypocrisy that she is committed to because it is the one that conserves her world and her health and her own well-being.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And Carson knows it exists, and Mia has been overlooking it, and, like, Natalie has been arguing against it, even though it is irrational and it has been committed to. And what I love is that Carson just has no illusions in this. Like he's been characterized as someone that is fantastic at reading people, and I think that this is showing some part of his working. Of to him, it's a nice idea that she would have done so much good that it makes it okay.
Yeah.
And it would be a nicer world if it worked like that. And he can behave as though those things are true and feed into that fantasy. He does. He knows it's an illusion. Like way back when he was thinking about pulling a gun out by his family home and breaking that illusion. Like he sees that just because it's not like a practical reality, something like invested in materials and like physics, doesn't mean it wouldn't be nice if we all acted like it was so. And
yeah,
like I think that's part of why he's having this conversation at all, because he's been witness to, like, he's just been taking these orders pretty much, and like he's been in the practical world. He's been reacting. He's been saying like we should go. Like Carson has been on the mission, and Mia and Natalie have been snipping at each other about two completely reconcilable worldviews. And Carson just depressurizes the whole argument of like, this is not a discussion. This is not an argument. This is two people that have completely contrary needs for what the facts of reality have to be, just biting at each other. It's like two forces like that clash. That neither will change over it. And he's just almost sweetly being a complete and total monster who doesn't exist in a world that has those things, those illusions, those stories as mandatory. Besides maybe the one that he's chosen, which is that he is in love. And so out of love for Mia, he says something that she can't say, that there are things that aren't realistic and aren't reasonable about her, the way she sees things, and aren't fair. And Natalie is the victim of that, and she like sucks to be her, no regrets, says Carson.
Yeah, and that's why I love him, honestly. I think that's a big part of why I love him. He is just very unrepentantly aware of the things that he is doing.
So warm and being ice cold.
Yes. I love him. Anyway. Then we move on. So then she leaves the group, decides to martyr herself, leaves the group. The crack of the rifle shot stopped her in her tracks. She heard the shot before she felt it. It struck the road right in front of her foot. And I'm like, I am loving how Wildbow's been doing these like fake outs. Like the way that gunshots are described in this book are just like always excellent. Like jarring and muddled and like someone reacting to something that they don't fully understand.
Yeah.
And like I read this the first time and I was like, oh shit, she got shot. And then like it struck the road right in front of her foot. And it's like, it's so good every time.
It's not necessarily obvious from how we read them out, but there's paragraphing that as you're scrolling down your phone or just like looking at it in a web browser, like there is a brief moment before you would turn the proverbial page, where you exist in those moments, and I love how Wildbow uses that. I really,
me too. It's so good.
As far as what you're saying about Wildbow using these fake outs and gunshots in general, he's taken them out into like a multiple step process of like the fire, the firing of the gun, the impact of the gun, and then sometime in the space of that, like maybe beforehand, people rolling out of the way as they see it, maybe after as they feel the injury, maybe in the midst of it as they try and predict where the bullet will go, or like are between, like having that half-second thought before the bullet lands. It's really interesting how much space he's found in just that violence.
Yeah, well, like not last chapter, but when Mia got shot, like the way that she was on the ground without ever like thinking about it, like just the way that like the incredible violence of a gunshot just completely overloads your brain, to the point where you can't properly like narrate what's happening to you. So for example, you might fall over and not realize that you've fallen over, but just be on the ground now. I really, really enjoy it. It's such a great, it's honestly, it's a great like example of Wildbow's skill as a writer. Because every time it happens, it feels intense. Then moving on, we get she'd had Camellia though, Ripley. And I'm like, again, this is exactly what I've been saying. This is fucking perfect. Like,
she fights for it. Yeah.
She fights for it. Like, this is one of those things where, like, 0% blame for her here for saying Camellia. That's how that works. When your brain has been, like, fully using a name for a long time and it changes, your brain is going to go, oh, the name I always use. The important thing afterwards is saying to yourself, no, Ripley, not Camellia, Ripley. So good. 10 out of 10. Love her work here. Amazing. No notes. Except for that one note.
So Natalie is coming up to Davy right now, and there's a quote that I want to pull of, like, she's constantly trying to, like, break through Davy's narrative.
Yes.
And she's also, like, speaking truth to the moment of, like, I don't feel very smart. Like, they're broken, defeated. They want to negotiate a surrender. You win. And I think this is the first moment we see a deliberate chink in the armor, because Natalie says you win, and Davy's reaction is, we can negotiate with the lines of communication we've already opened. No need for you to be a part of this back of the car. It's like dismissing her out of hand. Because he smiles at her when she shares that she's in pain because of the sweat and the pine needles. Yeah. And then her head hung, her hurt was evident, Davy was watching and listening. The fact he wasn't willing to be baited into a longer conversation. It's just like sort of bleeding off, you know? It's like where Natalie felt like this was resolved, Davy isn't acting as though it's resolved.
And that's it's just pure dismissal.
Yeah, it's our
of
first clue
everything about her.
That maybe it's not all together. And it made her contribution to all of this feel so minor. Every emotion became bitterness. It's just like being totally down in the dumps is exactly what she needs in this moment, but she got it.
Yeah. So it hurts though. Like, it really hurts to read. Because it feels like such a defeat. And like,
as far as fake
Natalie trying to fucking like Natalie putting her all in and like really fucking trying, and the world just not even. I've written in the notes here, like, beating her down, like the world beating her down. And I don't even think that's true. No, the world just dismisses her. Just says, you're not worth it. Go away. Like, oh, fuck, it hurts. Like, oh, God, yeah. It's hard to read. Hard to read, but so excellent. So then, obviously, Natalie heads to the cop car and has a little chat. So they had us on camera with the drone and asked for the person who couldn't move, accused us of, can't talk to you about that. It's out of my hands anyway. And I'm like, it feels so hopeless here. Like, there's no moves here that get her where she needs to be. Like, she can't be the one to open this dialogue with this person because, like he says, like, can't talk to you about that. Like, he's just not, he's not considering the fact that, like, the people above him are working against what they say they are. He can't, like, engage with the fact that, like, he might have been manipulated.
Well, he's been ordered not to.
Because...
So, like, the thing that gets him curious again and engaging as a person, not as, like, a worker, is... what do I recognize you from? And it's the goddamn advertisement campaign. It's the fucking charity.
Yeah. It's the pink and blue Camellia Teal ads.
I love that they canonized that it was horrific, the picture that they used. Like Sterling fully on the rights.
And I love this moment from him of, like, I was changing my kid years ago and she hucked herself over the edge of the changing table while I was reaching for the diapers. And I'm like, that's so good. Like, it's just this moment of, like, mutual acknowledgement that shit fucking happens. And it's not like it's not your fault, but you own up to it. Like, like, that's what, like, kids do shit. And when your brain is mush because you're a fucking new parent, like, shit happens. And then obviously this helps with Natalie, where she says, I left her in a hot car. I was tired, had no help. I looked away she blinked hard, her voice caught, and she didn't really fight the crack that resulted. Too long. Then she was gone. My life was over, or it felt like it was, and I couldn't pull it together enough for my other kid. I'm like, this is perfect. Like, yes, Natalie, yes, fucking own up to what has happened in your life. Like, own up to what has happened. Like, you do not need to be doing, like, the vicious, brutal attacking of yourself for looking away for too long, because it happens. It happens to basically everyone. Like, parenting is fucking hard. Parenting when you're essentially by yourself is fucking harder. Like, Natalie is not in the wrong for what happened with Camellia, but she does need to acknowledge what happened with Camellia, because up until this point, she has never.
It's just so graceful how much work the truth does. Because
yeah, absolutely.
We have seen just throughout this whole story people trying to categorize themselves and editorialize and so on and so forth. And for Natalie just to, as sincerely and rawly as possible, admit to something that she has needed as an emotional support and like give up on that crutch.
Yeah.
One that Mia has attacked, I think, unnecessarily, because it was like, Mia's only advantage that like Natalie had fucked up, and like turning that into a big thing was what let Mia sort of hide that she wasn't ever going to give Natalie a second chance.
Yeah. And that let Mia like hide her own failings around not taking the third option of, you know, with the two options being steal Camellia or let her die. Like, obviously, like, Mia never took the third option, and her excuse is, well, Natalie's evil.
Yeah. And it's so neatly how just with all of the sincerity in the world she can say this and like be blubbering, and it's like that's like snot dribbling all the way down to her lap kind of description. And the officer is just kind of confused because she asks, is the idea that, and the idea is that we attacked, took people hostage, and the officer goes, the idea? What do you mean the idea? And takes a moment to think critically and go, I don't think this woman could possibly be a criminal. It just doesn't make sense. Like, maybe she's done something wrong to get here, but she doesn't have that.
It doesn't add up. Yeah.
I mean, how would Davey put it? She doesn't have that zazz.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, no, it's so good, and like she just gives him enough of like reasonable doubt, like showing like the fact that her leg has like the manacle like thing, and like how fucked up she is and everything, and like being like, oh, they told you like he was a local businessman, like, okay. Like, it's just giving him enough doubt, like that empathy, and then following the empathy, the doubt. And like that's when he whistles over to his partner,
Misko, who dies immediately.
Yeah, in a fucking horrible way. So the woman officer walked over, thumbs hooked at the edges of her vest. A moment later, her skull shattered, and I'm like, okay, like that's enough, you know, like if you're like writing a book, then it keeps going. Like, a bullet hit the top of her head with enough force that it seemed to lift her up another half-foot mid-stride. Skin separated from bone, and bone separated into fragments. After that initial impact, the area around her forehead and the crown of her head all folded in toward the brain, in sync with the moment Natalie registered the sound. She flopped to the ground. Natalie wasn't sure if she heard the splatter and small pieces hitting the ground after everything else, or if it was imagination. The sirens screamed around them. Fucking hell, Wildbow. Like, absolutely nailing it. Like, that is so visceral, so horrifying. And it takes this moment of like, where you have this moment of hope, like, oh shit, the cops have listened to her. Like, he's going to get his partner. Like, they're going to talk. Like, because he hasn't even said anything. He just whistled to his partner. And she immediately gets killed in this incredibly visceral, brutal way that just reminds you how fragile these people are and how much these odds are stacked against them. And it's fucked. You know, like, it's fucked. It's so brutal. Yeah, I liked it. But it's fucked.
The thing that I love about this scene, like, obviously we have this shock to reality as the battle goes both ways. There's this moment of viscera just before this moment of true gore, where Natalie shows the shackle, the mark from where she and Ripley had been shackled in the basement. And you know, there's something to really say for what follows, that it is the evidence of having been imprisoned that gives Natalie the opportunity to, with the same sort of tool that she was imprisoned with, kill the man that imprisoned her. So the real practical truth of reality is what gets through Davy as his story starts to spin out, because in this initial like burst of conflict, immediately he's just saying random shit. like he's on radio. He's falling behind. He says, "Yeah, thank you." It's all non sequitur among gunshot fire.
Yeah.
And it's the story that Davy has been trying to tell is falling apart, and we get Natalie just bringing reality to bear.
Oh, it's so good. But yeah, I mean, she doesn't bring all reality to bear here at the moment, because she's thinking like anger at herself that her last exchanges had been ones that hurt Ripley more, and maybe one Ripley would regret not giving her that mama. And I'm like, sweetie, that's not reality. That's just torturing yourself. And I've brought back the little crying emoji here for this one, because it hurts. Like, it sucks. Like, Natalie, please.
And like in that moment of agony, of perceiving Ripley as going to be even more pain just because of this, and being instrumental to causing that sort of pain again, she declaws herself, or rather degloves herself.
Yeah, with all of that, Natalie was able to push past the physical pain. She dragged a handcuff past her wrist and past her hand, and then I stopped. I did not pull the rest of the quote because I did not want to. Because I read it again when I did my reread, and I went, oh. So Wildbow, sometimes you nail it with the viscerality of your writing. It's very hard to read, but it's so good. But again, that part is very hard to read, and I'm not going to subject people to hearing it again. It
really, that whole fight is hard to read.
It is, and I think that's part of why I bounced off it the first time.
It's written as action, so there's a lot of spacing to make things hit individually. What I love about this fight is how it gets onto the ground, which is what happens in real life. When pretty much any fight that is really happening, people will end up on the floor, grappling and trying to just leverage at each other. And so there's tucks and grabbing, and it's all just brutally things that no part of the body should be made to do, and no part of the body is usually represented as doing. It's hair grabbing. There's chins that get tucked away from being bombarded. There's just frantic grabbing, eye into nail into eye socket. It's
the damaged thumb into his eye socket, which is it doesn't do that much damage to his eye, but it just covers it in blood, and I'm like, oh.
And just the moment that this fight is happening, it's everyone that have been working for Davy pauses.
Yeah.
Because he's not there to be in charge.
Yeah, he's not. He doesn't have that same aura of calm, in control Davy. He's the dude on the ground in the knockout fight that's desperately trying to beat some woman to death. Yeah. And then so at the end here we get, well, it's not quite at the end, but a part of her needed to scream something primal to let all of the hurt out, to somehow free those images of the dismembered people from the darkest parts of her mind, the images of Ripley's expressions, the years of worrying, wondering, hating, but she was too hurt to, or the hurt was too big. A twist, while that serrated edge of the cuff was inside the side of his neck, and then she pulled with all of her strength. Second kill to Natalie. Fucking
a true bear
intense.
Claw. And
a true bear claw.
we knew that Mia was the archetype of the mama bear. She's hoarding stuff for winter. She's hibernating. She's big. She's strong. But Natalie bringing primal rage in the name of protecting her daughter, and
so
ripping this man
good.
to shreds. That there's something to be said for the way that violence is different from how it is in reality and how it is in stories. And I think the best way to demonstrate that is that the comments section for this chapter is cheering for Natalie. Everyone is so excited to see our big bad, our antagonist, Davy, who's such an asshole and we hate so much, be torn to shreds. It's people will cry for blood if it's fiction, and they think the person deserves it. When we were reading Ben's chapter, where he shot people, I dug into it as I feel like he was compelled to, in order to feel useful, he chose violence, and it was this moment of you just ended some human beings' lives that is going to haunt you, that you're not supposed to be able to do that. Whereas this level of violence is coming from such a deeply personal place of like dark vengeance, where I think anyone like where the Ben response is sort of like, oh no, like he's become a killer, like that's going to change him, that's going to stick with him, that's a thing that no human should be forced to do. This sort of bloody vengeance is, I think, something that sits in like your imagination as like, oh, wouldn't it be just excellent if I could just destroy the object of my ire? Wouldn't it be lovely if the cause of my problems could be annihilated? That like deep sanguine viciousness gets really satisfied here. And I'm really glad that I can come to books for that rather than like
it is brilliant. Like, it is so satisfying. And there's like it feels very like Murdered in Hot Blood, where like with Ben it felt more Murdered in Cold Blood, where it was like more of a tactical decision for Ben.
Yeah.
Obviously not quite, like it wasn't fully like what we think of when we think like Murdered in Cold Blood, but it was closer.
Really Mia's murder at the beginning of the story.
Yeah. That's Murdered in Cold Blood.
That was Cold Blood.
Yeah. But this is like the hottest of hot blood that there is. Like, charging him, desperately trying to hit him in any possible way, and then just like scraping at him with the handcuffs, followed by like getting it stuck into his neck and ripping. Like, it's as raw and desperate and primal as you can get. And it's fucking satisfying, obviously.
It's very satisfying.
Yeah.
We have this, and I would love to get a deep dive on Davies some other date, when we can access the full breadth of this chapter. But it's an excellent way for him to die.
Yes,
because he overlooked Natalie once and he learned nothing.
I mean, I love it. I like overlooking the weak person, the non-criminal, when he's like when his world is defined by quote unquote business. And like overlooking just this woman who is small and not super strong and not super smart and not anything. She's just a person and just trying her best. And she, through desperation, manages to fucking kill him.
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
I'm happy for her.
Me too.
Then, of course, we get the fake out where we think she's been shot and she's been killed, and it's not the end of the chapter, and she wakes up at a hospital.
Yeah. And you've pulled some things here of some quotes here of like, why hadn't the drone operator gunned her down the moment she passed out? No loyalty. What he'd set up hadn't mattered in the right way. And then also, like, it as an attached thought was a quietly disconcerting thing to Natalie, that the charity might have been the thing to open the door to the officer looking at her, listening to her. That those instincts to play along, to wait, might have been some small part of why Davy hadn't done more against her. Like, yeah, I really like it. And like, obviously, like, we have talked about loyalty a couple of times, about how like having people be actually loyal to your ideas and like being able to help them and like really build them up, like fosters a type of loyalty that is different than just, that's the guy that gives me my check. Like, people weren't loyal to Davy. They were loyal to his older brother Nick, who's in the hospital. Sounds like they were loyal to his younger brother Andre, because he actually, like, we had a couple of moments of people saying like, oh, Andre's one of the ones that actually talks to people. But they weren't loyal to Davy because Davy was the freak that put people in the basement. And so, yeah, when push comes to shove, yeah, it's fine that Davy gets killed. Like, people aren't he desperately trying to save him.
Did a lot of murder himself.
He did do a lot of murder himself.
Comeuppance. It's only fair. But the thing that reason that I pull that quote of just Natalie laying it out the moment she gets a moment to rest in the hospital is that we have this first chapter of Natalie, the second chapter of Natalie, and this culminating moment for the story as a whole. So to take a moment just to tell us like what it is we're supposed to be seeing, and go from this action-packed like heavy visceral visual experience to just a character thinking and asking the question and trying to get at the core of the meaning of what we've just seen.
Yeah.
The idea that Natalie, who has been in survival mode and not been able to grow very much as a person and had all of these stopping blocks of just like I can't go past this because I haven't resolved that. For her to be able to, like, even in that state, to be able to take down Davy, like, undo such a great wrong in the world, physically free herself while also mentally freeing herself, and like acknowledging a mistake that everyone makes, like a normal, like, human mistake, not making it out to be a huge shame that is like that undermines her personage, or like breaks an oath or is against the story of her person. For acceptance to so immediately into triumph, and just to be able to sit back and go, that is why even in Natalie's state, she was better than Davy. That, like, what he was doing was so profane and evil that it just hadn't mattered in the right way, because Natalie, who in this state of suffering, was able to not just be useful, but to be redemptive and to undo the evil that he's doing in the world by finishing him. There's something really beautiful here, because, you know, Natalie being so normal, and in a number of ways, in her the way that she is normal, kind of abrasive and difficult and having a lot of challenges and difficulties, even then she's able to beat a monster like Davy. It's such a excellent rebuttal to his existence, and like the forces that he represents of acting out of fear, like acting out of duty, blackmail, all of these, all of the like, not just crime that is criminal, but crime that is wrong in the world.
Yeah.
Like that it just doesn't serve him, because here is someone that has done something wrong, but not criminal, or at least like something that is deeply forgivable and understandable.
Yes.
And the moment that she can like be vulnerable, this like that the truth of that, and like put herself out there for forgiveness, she is given empathy and understanding, and that is the avenue not just to free yourself, but to free others. It's like, if the book had ended there, if we followed Natalie all this way, that is a powerful message. Yes. But it doesn't end there.
It doesn't.
Putting it simply, the story's not over yet.
Yeah. The chapter's not even over yet. Crazy. So yeah, then we get our hospital scene, which is an excellent little scene. And we get this moment here, which I've pulled, which is a horrible sadness surged in her chest, as if the small amount of relief wasn't allowed without answer. She had to fight it to avoid breaking into sudden, inexplicable sobs. If she did, her ribs and stomach wouldn't tolerate it. And it's like such a heartbreak again. Like, she's made it through. She's defeated the evil. She has been saved by this person that she has saved herself. And now it's very possible she'll never see Ripley again. And she has to contend with that fact.
Well, she might not see Ripley, but she might hear Ripley, because on the back of the card was a scribbled phone number with 4 letters: CMRT, Carson, Mia, Ripley, Tier.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, she's clawed her way out.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I like that. Because I tried to figure out what CMRT was, and I couldn't figure it out.
Did you not put that together?
Thank you. I did not.
Well,
I'm not
big
always very
reveal
clever.
for those at home that didn't fix that together. CMRT. I
like that.
Well, you know, I actually want to point out to you that CMRT, Carson, Mia, Ripley, Tier doesn't have a V in it, so no Valentina.
No Valentina. Is this you moving on into your BS prediction?
Well, maybe. We'll get there. I just wanted to say, okay, you know, it's interesting that Val isn't there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope we'll catch up with Lorraine Roy at some point, even if it's just an epilogue phone call between her and Ripley.
I hope so. So as we're recording this, 6.5 is out, but neither of us have read it, I don't think.
You got plenty to look forward to.
Yeah. Wait, have you read it?
No.
Okay, no.
I'm just excited.
I'm also excited. I finished this chapter, and my immediate thought was like, what the fuck is going to be next chapter? So I'm very keen to read 6.5.
But you know,
yeah,
I'm looking forward to what the future has in store now that we have what I think is like a beating heart of Claw's meaning and Lorraine Roy to guard it.
I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, like there's that. Yeah. Before we see the CMRT that obviously everyone with a brain realizes is Carson Mayer Ripley Tier, like feeling that hopelessness as like the as the nurse says, "Oh, there's no daughter." Like, yeah, the guy with crazy eyes came in and brought a son. Yeah, but like, no daughter, no 11-year-old. Yeah, like you really feel like that pain in that moment, as it feels like even through all she's gone, like everything that's happened, it's very possible that even after all of that, Ripley is gone in the wind. Oof. Fucking what a chapter.
What a chapter. Dear my
God.
Yeah. Would you care to share your bold and specific prediction?
Sure, yeah. Let's get into it. So my bold and specific prediction, which I think is very fun, is Mia and Carson are in the next hospital room down, just incidentally, not planned. We'll get a few chapters of like wacky hijinks near misses until they bump into each other in the hallway, and we get a dramatic "you" and like pointing at each other moment.
Yeah, like Spider-Man.
I'm looking forward to it.
I really love how the end of it turns into a comedy.
Yeah, it'll be good. We need that right now, actually. Yeah. I don't want you to share your BS prediction, but do you want to share it?
Yeah, sure. I think Val is dead, and I won't elaborate.
I just want to say, bruh.
Little teary emoji.
Little tear emoji, yeah. Why? Why?
I won't elaborate. Discussion question. Last week we asked.
I hate this. What's a wacky idea for a Home Alone-esque trap that you'd like to see in a situation like Mia's?
40i2, who had some really hard-hitting analysis of Mia's argument with Natalie. I would love to revisit that in the interrogation episode.
Yeah, it was good. I enjoyed reading that, yeah.
Not sure how my sense of wacky is doing after reading Claw, but I'll try. This is not directly inspired by Home Alone, but by another lighthearted classic, specifically by parallels between Mia and Walter White. Instead of outright mercy killing all the victims in the basement, Mia could leave alive some volunteers, equipping them with some explosives they could trigger. When Davy would rush back in to check on his prize collection, they could blow it up while looking him in the eye.
Perfect.
Yeah, I love Home Alone.
I like
that was my favorite scene.
So Bellic Tal says, I haven't thought of a Home Alone trap for Mia's situation, but for a different situation, build a whole duplicate house as a decoy, then when they enter it, it explodes and leaves only a crater behind, which I mentioned is very Looney Tunes. Yeah.
Coblin said, exploding inflatable Santa. Coblin did explain, but asked us not to elaborate on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, it's in our Discord thread.
Which you
want to read
join
it? It was
on Discord.
Yeah.
Come to DriftMedia.com/Discord.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it was a fun explanation. I enjoyed it. But I also did enjoy just reading, especially because like I went to work, like I posted in the Discord saying like we're gonna record soon. If anyone has an answer, like pop it in here. Then I went to work and then I just got a ping like on my phone and I check it and it just says exploding inflatable Santa. And that's all the context I got until a couple of hours later when I got home and was able to actually check the thread.
That's hilarious.
It was fun. So Homer Demon says, one of the underappreciated Home Alone gags involved the use of strings to simulate movement in mannequins so their shadows would mimic adult humans present in the house. There's a classic shitpost that goes around of something similar, but involving a mannequin dressed up in tactical gear, including a plate carrier filled with screws and with its chest cavity filled with tannerite, so that an intruder who shoots the obviously threatening, harmed human-shaped thing initiates an explosion similar to a claymore mine. However, that won't work in Mia's situation because the Cavalcanti goons are armed with pistols, and tannerite is only set off by projectiles exceeding around Mach 2, which is about 2/3 of a Mach more than most pistols can achieve. I enjoy this answer just because it's so over-the-top nerdy. Anyway, so what she might do instead is the even more Home Alone-esque solution of the classic bucket balanced on a door gag, but filled with flour instead of water, and with human-shaped cardboard cutouts suspended on strings pulling them towards the door in a serpentine pattern. The idea of being, of course, to cover the bad guys in flour before their gunfire ignites the flour. Depending on aeration, it could result in a debilitating fireball or a fully thermobaric explosion. In case this answer seems too extreme, a reminder that Marv and Harry should have died at least 21 times combined, according to Screen Junkies. No, that feels perfectly in line with Home Alone, actually.
Yeah, it could happen. User Wildbow was thinking about what could happen in a modern day version. KJ McAllister, lost in the shuffle after his parents' divorce, when each parent thinks he's with the other, remains at a home they were flipping before the divorce. He sets up a fairly standard trap of burning feet, fake out trap where nothing seems to happen until a pot of hot water pours onto the floor, and the nearest chair is rigged so the seat is a glue trap. A short distance away is a rug soaked in icy hot, with a bench nearby, also a glue trap. But the real trap is the camera he's planted. After burning feet, Sitting, they extricate themselves, step onto the rug, experience intense and unique freezing and burning sensations, and are forced to sit down again. They're caught on camera in footage broadcast to the internet, divested of pants and underwear, accosting a child. Not a murderous trap, directly, but social death. And man, will it not play well in prison.
This is one of those answers where I'm like, man, you do not want to fuck with Wildbow. Not only did he write Claw, but he could also write this. Yeah.
It's the sort of thing of
it's very fun.
Like, what I appreciate about this answer is that I think it is more to the spirit of Home Alone than Home Alone in truth is. Because it's wacky. I mean, as Hoba Demon said, it's lethal for the most part. Whereas this is very done to embarrass. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good. So Spinagon, I guess, more along the line of Hobo Demon's answer than Wildbow's here.
I don't
in terms of
know if Spinagon
lethality.
Realized that they were answering the DQ. just sort of threw this out there after Wildbow's answer. I copy pasted one and got both, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, it was good. So Spinagon says a web camera, Raspberry Pi with facial recognition software, a couple servos, and a 1,000 megawatt near infrared laser. Before they know it, their eyeballs evaporate, which is brutal.
Which is
I liked it.
The other spirit of Home Alone.
Yes, very much. So
to get into our answers.
Yeah. So I think in the basement they really underutilized those syringes full of morphine. If they'd set them up at the bottom of some stairs with a wacky trip trap like they did on the stairs, it could have been really fun. Have the people fall onto the syringes of morphine, and the body weight pushes down the syringe and immediately kills the people. Very wacky.
I love it.
I like your answer more though.
It took some thought. I'm glad we didn't record this morning because I meditated on this while I was in my various drug-induced comas to heal from what my body's got going on. From the veils of dream, I came up with using specific distributions of mops, duct tape, and wrongly sized hazmat suits. Ripley and Brian disguise as Mia. Mia disguises as Natalie. Natalie as Carson, and Carson disguises as Ripley and Brian trenchcoating in a hazmat suit. Without the ability to figure out who is who or how large they are, surely, at least, Brian wouldn't have been shot. Which is why they should have done this from the start.
I think this is the perfect discussion question answer. Anyway,
I worked very hard on it. I mean, my sleep-addled brain.
Good job. This week's discussion question is:
if, hypothetically, you were going to change your name and flee to a second chance on life, who would you like to be? Name, location, profession? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, so that's our show.
Check out Wildbow's Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. This is his multiple villainous monologues. We're just stumbling through the woods.
And please give us a rating and a review on the podcatcher of your choice.
If you want to chat to us about the show or follow along with live reads, check out our channel on the Doof Media Discord. Find the invite link at doofmedia.com/Discord.
All right, bye.
Bye for now.